This is BBC One. Now, live coverage of the national proclamations of His Majesty the King.
Good morning. The Queen's final journey has begun. Her coffin left Balmoral at 10 o'clock this morning and is now making its way slowly to the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh. Tomorrow, Her Majesty's coffin will be moved to St Giles's Cathedral in the city, where people will be able to pay their respects before her coffin arrives in London on Tuesday. While that sad journey is underway, a 6-hour journey from Balmoral to Edinburgh, the traditional proclamations for the new king continue to fan out right across the United Kingdom. It started yesterday in London. The first proclamation, the principal proclamation as it's called, took place on the balcony of St James's Palace overlooking Friary Court at 11 o'clock yesterday morning.
3 cheers for His Majesty the King. Hip, hip. Hooray! Hip, hip. Hooray! Hip, hip. Hooray!
That took place after the King's first Privy Council meeting, at which he made his declaration and signed the oath to the Church of Scotland in front of Prime Ministers past and present. It was his first official act as King, one that was following in the footsteps of more than 300 years of tradition. While King Charles III is having to focus on his new role as sovereign, ensuring the continuity of the monarch, he and his family are coming to terms with the sudden death of a much-loved mother and grandmother. Prince Harry and Prince William came together yesterday at Windsor Castle with their wives to look at the many floral tributes and messages that have been left for their grandmother. Prince William said, "She was by my side at my happiest moments, and she was by my side during the saddest days of my life." In fact, she was a constant in all our lives, and that, after all, is the role of the monarchy, as we have seen in the history and pageantry of the last 24 hours as the new king was proclaimed, first in London and now today, right across the UK. Preparations are underway in Scotland, in Wales and in Northern Ireland for the proclamations that will all take place at noon today. They take place simultaneously, and just to say, if that you do want to watch any of today's proceedings without commentary, you can watch by pressing the red button. Well, the Queen was the most travelled monarch in history as she journeyed far and wide around the world and, of course, right across the United Kingdom. As sovereign, Queen Elizabeth spent many years forging strong bonds with each nation, and in turn, there was great admiration and great respect for her.
I cannot forget that I was crowned Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. For to me, Scotland and happiness have always been closely interwoven. In the days of my childhood, in my mother's home at Glamis,
The sun seemed always to be shining.
The grit, determination and humour, the forthrightness, and above all, the strong sense of identity of the Scottish people. These qualities reflect a Scotland which, if I may make a personal point, occupies such a special place in my own and my family's affections. This is the last day of my Jubilee visit around the United Kingdom, and I am glad that it should be spent amongst the people of Northern Ireland who have suffered and courageously borne so much. Over the last half-century, I have always enjoyed my visits to Northern Ireland. I have been heartened by the warmth and good humour of the people I have met.
I am always glad of an opportunity to visit Wales, and it is with special pleasure that I come to Cardiff today to receive the freedom of your famous city.
The Duke of Edinburgh and I have greatly appreciated the welcome which we have received in the places we have visited, large and small, from Bangor to Newport. We are reminded here of our past, of the continuity of our national story, and the virtues of resilience, ingenuity, and tolerance which created it. I have been privileged to witness some of that history, and with the support of my family, rededicate myself to the service of our great country and its people, now and in the years to come.
Well, this is what is going to happen at midday today. The proclamations will be held in Edinburgh at the Mercat Cross, at Cardiff Castle, and in Northern Ireland at Royal Hillsborough. And we will go straight to Royal Hillsborough. Mark Simpson is there for us now. Mark.
Well, this was the Queen's home from home, Hillsborough Castle, during her 22 visits to Northern Ireland during her long reign. And it's here today that her death and the succession of her son will be officially announced. As you can see behind me, there's an audience of around 100 people here waiting to hear that proclamation. And what they're going to see, what they're going to hear, will be very similar to what many viewers may have seen yesterday outside St James's Palace in London. A procession, the proclamation, the national anthem, and then 3 cheers for the new king. It'll all begin just before 12 o'clock here at Hillsborough Castle, whatever the weather.
Mark, thank you. Well, let's go to Scotland, to Edinburgh, where there are big crowds. Kirsty Walk is there for us. Kirsty.
Yes, this morning, a beautiful morning here in Edinburgh, and an air of solemnity. The crowds outside Parliament Square, where I'm standing now, are 8-10 deep, and there's a feeling that they are witnessing history. The military behind me are awaiting the proclamation too. And behind me, the Mercat Cross. The Mercat Cross dates back from the 14th century. That's where proclamations have been made at times when people could neither read nor write. 1 minute to 12, the trumpeters will sound. At 12 o'clock, the Lord Lion King of Arms will make the proclamation, and then after that the trumpeters will sound again. And of course at my right, just here in this historic part of Edinburgh, at St Giles, the Queen will be at rest here tomorrow. She is at the Palace of Holyrood House tonight when that 6-hour journey is complete. And of course in 1952, when Queen Elizabeth II acceded the throne, she too came here. The proclamation was made here at the Mercat Cross. And at the Mercat Cross in 1952, the crowds were right up to the Mercat Cross, many, many deep. Very solemn occasion then, as it is today. And what will happen, of course, is that all the people that are around here will hear this for history. Then it was a much more limited time. And this very, very important part of our constitutional history will be beamed around the world for all to see. Sophie.
Majesty, thank you. And there are big crowds too in Cardiff this morning. Jason Mohammed is at Cardiff Castle. Jason.
Bore da, Sophie. Good morning. Welcome to Cardiff Castle, situated at the heart of our capital city. The castle has played host to many royal visits over the years. In fact, the former Prince of Wales was here in 2018 as part of his 70th birthday celebrations. It's a more sombre occasion in the castle today, but one that is significant in the history of Cardiff and the whole of Wales. As the longest-serving Prince of Wales in history, King Charles III undoubtedly has a special affinity with Wales, and a large crowd has gathered here in the castle grounds, some here queuing up outside at 7 this morning. The Proclamation Guards from the 3rd Battalion, the Royal Welsh and the Band of the Royal Welsh are in position in front of the castle apartments. In a few minutes' time, the party will arrive, led by the First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford, and this will be a very different ceremony, Sophie, as this will be bilingual, both in Cymraeg, Welsh and English.
Jason, thank you. Well, I'm joined in the studio by the royal editor at the Sunday Times, Roya Nikar, and also with me is the former Director of Royal Communications at Buckingham Palace, Sally Osman, and the former lecturer at Aberystwyth University, Sir Diane Hopkin. Good morning to all of you. Let me start with you, Sir Diane, because we were just hearing about the fact that this proclamation in Wales will be in Welsh too, it will be bilingual, and you know just how important Wales and Welsh was to the new king.
Certainly, and when he came to Aberystwyth, of course, we must remember he was a student at Cambridge and he had to continue his studies, but he spent a term in order to learn enough Welsh to be able to make a speech at the investiture in Carnarvon. Now, of course, you're not going to learn Welsh fluently in 9 weeks, but he did a very good job. He also, of course, came to our department, and I was a junior lecturer, and he continued his studies, but we were not allowed to teach him. He had a tutor, and he did essays. I don't know what the essays were, but he certainly seemed to have enjoyed himself because he was immersed in the community. He actually lived in a hall of residence. He lived with other students. He even went to their homes. And so I think he had, a much more comfortable time than what we understand he may have had in his school days.
And that was back in 1969, wasn't it?
1969. I was a very junior lecturer, by the way, I hasten to add.
And do you have any idea how good his Welsh actually is?
Oh, I think, well, it's very difficult, of course, because you have to keep it going, like learning the piano or something. I suspect he can actually become very credible, make a creditable speech now, but I wouldn't expect him to have a conversation or to do a programme on Radio Cymru or something. But certainly he has shown an awareness. And that was the important thing about him coming there, was to immerse himself in the history, to understand what kind of country he was coming to, bearing in mind, of course, that he was very young.
And he will be back there again this week because, of course, the proclamations the proclamations begin, and we will hear them again today in Wales and Northern Ireland and Scotland. It's an extraordinary moment, this, isn't it? Because we are seeing this transition, the new proclamations being made across the United Kingdom at the same time as we are seeing these extraordinary images of the Queen's coffin, being brought very slowly back from Balmoral to London.
Well, absolutely, and this is as much about the mourning of the passing of Queen Elizabeth as it is about the emergence in public. Very, very, clear, strong intent from the King to be, with the public, with the people, and we will see more of him today, I believe. It is an extraordinary transition, but of course it goes back to the heart of the new monarch being visible. It's a very important time for him to be out there meeting the public, as well as, I think, some of us perhaps forget that he barely has time at the moment to mourn the passing of his mother. But absolutely, the proclamations are important. It is a very swift transition. And I think we will see the King out and about today a little bit more.
And you can see just from the crowds out on the streets today, in all those cities, how important these proclamations are.
They are. It's that sort of... It's that ritual, that ancient ritual of the passing of the baton from one monarch to the next. We saw it yesterday at St James's Palace in all its sort of glory and splendour, very, very official, but very, very sombre occasion. And I think the fact that we're going to see them today as the Queen makes her way to Edinburgh in all the different parts of the United Kingdom, it almost throws forward to what we are going to see from the new King in the next few days. He will also following those proclamations, he will be in all four corners of the United Kingdom in the coming days.
And Sally Osman, you spent a lot of time at Buckingham Palace. You have spent time with the Queen in Scotland. You have spent time with Prince Charles, now the new King. It is extraordinary watching these images here, isn't it? The streets lined. It does give us a sense of what is to come.
It does, and I think Roya's point about ritual is really important, actually, because that's what we're seeing played out over these days leading up to the funeral. And like with any family, with any group of people, the rituals of mourning, but also celebrating a life, are really, really critical. These plans, as we know, have been in place for many years, which is why things are able to move at speed, at pace from the moment that we lost the Queen. The King has been aware of those, what will need to happen. And there is a lot of pressure on him as a person, as an individual, because he's a son in mourning, along with his siblings and the rest of the family, but has to go through these symbolic, important acts that are very important to the Constitution, some of which we're seeing the early moments of, some we haven't seen yet. But they are all part of the statecraft that is very important and totally underpins the institution of monarchy.
And he has had a long time to think about this new role and how he will handle it. But we already see the visibility that he is clearly putting a lot of emphasis on, something that the Queen herself was very aware of. You have to be seen to be believed is something she thought, isn't it?
She lived by that mantra, as do most of the royal family. They understand how important it is for their own credibility, for their own relevance in terms of their work moving forward and their relevance in people's lives. And so he will be very conscious of that. And of course, the Queen, as has been commented on many times, moved with the times in terms of how technology enabled her to be visible. So it was, of course, going and meeting people face to face, shaking hands, making speeches, etc. You can never beat that in-person presence. But with television, with then social media, I mean, she was very fast to realise the importance of digital and social media in terms of bringing that seeing is believing mantra to a much wider constituency. There was a moment when we put digital at the heart of our operation. She came to see the team, and one of them said to her, "Your Majesty, this is like having a handshake with the whole Commonwealth." And she understood that's exactly what it enabled.
And yet what we are seeing today, the proclamations, could not be more different. It is stretching back into the past, isn't it? This is something that happened centuries ago, these proclamations which take place at 12 o'clock, and the preparations continue. We can go back to Edinburgh now and Kirsty Walker.
Sophie, I'm joined now by Elizabeth Rhodes, who was the first woman to be made an Officer of Arms and was the Lion Clerk and Keeper of the Records till very recently, and really was very heavily involved in such a day as this. This is a moment, Elizabeth, of great constitutional significance, and also a day when the atmosphere is one of reflection and anticipation, because as we were saying earlier, it moves very swiftly. The Queen's coffin is making her way to Edinburgh, but actually the statecraft continues.
Absolutely, nothing changes in the sense of the order in which things happen. And there are moments in it like this which very much are reflecting on the next stage of our country's life, the proclamation of the new king. But it is also a reflection, obviously, that the rest of the week will be looking back on the life of the Queen.
And you, of course, have performed many ceremonial roles, but tell me about your links to the Queen specifically.
Well, I was lucky enough to meet her on a number of occasions, and she was always fascinated in what people did and why they did it. She had an eye for detail that was sometimes quite frightening, because she would remember things, but a glorious twinkle. But I think the real thing was she was interested in people and why things happened.
And of course, we were talking about the fact that this is a family grieving, but because of statehood, because of what has to happen now, King Charles III is going to be exceptionally taken up with affairs of state.
Yes, and I think that must be very hard, because you've lost your mother. those of us who've been in that position know what it's like, and you have to grieve in the public eye. But he's been well trained, and he will understand that he needs to now reflect that he is the king and to engage with people as their new king.
Elizabeth Rhodes, thank you very much indeed. Sophie.
Kirsty, thank you. Well, while we look ahead to those proclamations, which will take place in 10 minutes' time, we also watch the Queen's cortege travelling through the streets of Scotland on its 6-hour journey from Balmoral to Edinburgh. It is about halfway through that journey now, and everywhere you see people lining the streets, standing quietly, paying their tributes to the Queen. Sally Osman, we didn't see what happened when she actually left Balmoral itself, but we have been told some details, and it was very moving, wasn't it? The people who have worked for her for a very, very long time at that estate.
They're part of the professional family, if you could call it, who will be grieving as much as the nation. But those touches, those very personal touches of the wreath with the flowers that were representing Balmoral, of the gamekeepers, you know, people who she's known for many, many years. And I'm sure that there would have been staff there who have worked with her for a very long time, who know her, who see her off duty. And those people who have been constants in her life, her private staff, her personal footmen and pages, the ladies in waiting who have been a constant with her, you know, from the moment she became queen, who are a wonderful group of people. So these little personal touches in this part of the ritual are really touching, because it shows you this is a woman who, you know, was a mother, a friend, a grandmother. You know, they're really powerful, these sort of symbolisms, that she would have been a part of making those decisions as well.
And while all this is happening, the new king prepares to set out on his travels right across the United Kingdom, and he will be accompanied by the Prime Minister.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it is the most extraordinary week. A new monarch and a new Prime Minister getting to know each other. It's going to be one of the most probably formative weeks in both of their professional lives, careers. And I think that you know, the national tour that the King is about to do gives us an indication as well of how different his reign is going to be from the Queen. The Queen didn't do a national tour on her accession, but for King Charles, it's very important for him that he is seen around the United Kingdom, that this is a critical moment for the Union. I think the fact that Liz Truss is going with him reflects that. But again, it just shows that, you know, we've heard from him this week in his national address, full of emotion, but quite different to the way the Queen gave her national addresses. And I think him going on this national tour just shows us, you know, he's very keen that his reign is about connectivity and the Union.
And you get a sense, don't you, from seeing all these images as well, as the cortege passes through Scotland, of what is to come in the days ahead as the coffin approaches London and Windsor, the Queen's final resting place.
Well, we were reporting today in the Sunday Times that the government have given, you know, estimates of, they think, you know, up to a million people will line the streets as she makes her way. I think that's an enormous underestimate. I think from what we're seeing today, it's going to be huge. I think people, as we've seen in some of those towns that the Queen is making her way through today, it is literally almost looks like the entire population of town. So I think it's going to be absolutely extraordinary. That we can see the public response already is enormous.
Well, a few minutes now to the proclamations, and they are beginning to assemble for the proclamation in Edinburgh. We can join James Noherty, who is going to talk us through it. James.
Sophie, the preparations are in place for the first of the ceremonial acts in the capital of Scotland, which of course continue tomorrow with the service in St Giles. And the Royal Mile is looking magnificent in the sunshine. The Guard of Honour is in place. We'll hear the national anthem played by the band of His Majesty's Royal Marines in Scotland. The Guard of Honour comes from the Royal Regiment of Scotland. Colonel-in-Chief was the Queen, who was also the Colonel of the 5th Battalion, Balaclava Regiment, which is here as the Guard of Honour beside the Market Cross, the old Market Cross, for those from outside Scotland, in the High Street, the Royal Mile, right next to St Giles Cathedral, which has been the site of so much ceremonial in this city and speaks of its story. This is the old part of Edinburgh, the old town, leading down from the castle to the Palace of Holyrood House, where the Queen will lie tonight. That palace, which takes us back into history, it was the home of Mary, Queen of Scots in the middle of the 16th century. Every monarch has known it since the Queen was last there in June, knows it extremely well, as the rest of the family do too. And that route from Holyrood, just past the Scottish Parliament, up the Royal Mile towards the castle, is one that has seen so much history played out. Political leaders in Scotland are here watching as the dignitaries take their places round the Market Cross, the traditional place where announcements and proclamations are made. We'll see the Lord Provost of Edinburgh, Councillor Robert Aldrich, and of course the Lord Lion, King of Arms, in charge of all matters heraldic in Scotland, Dr. Joseph Morrow, who will read the proclamation, the same wording as we heard earlier that we had at St James's Palace yesterday. Everyone begins to take the places round this wonderful structure, which has obviously changed down the years. And a curious little detail is that the base of it there, which was restored in the 19th century, was actually a gift from Mr. Gladstone, whose family came from Edinburgh, and he gifted that in the 1880s. So it has a political history as well as a historic history. And behind the Market Cross there, Parliament House in Edinburgh, where the Scottish Parliament sat until 1707. The Union of Parliaments took place in that year. The Union of the Crowns, of course, 100 years earlier, a little over 100 years in 1603, after the death of Queen Elizabeth I, when James VI of Scotland became James I of England. And the proclamation really dates from that time, because of course James was in Scotland, and they had to make a proclamation in London because he couldn't get there for quite a few days. The Royal Archers are here. Now, the Royal Archers are the King's bodyguard in Scotland. The Captain General is the Duke of Buccleuch and Queensberry, and they are in their ceremonial green uniforms. They're carrying their bows and arrows. They do actually do archery, some of them anyway, but of course this is a formal appearance for them as the King's bodyguard, as they were the Queen's bodyguard, always there at Holyrood House and at official occasions in Edinburgh when the monarch is present. The judges alongside Edinburgh, looking like a capital city at this moment, as we wait to hear the announcement that will welcome the new monarch to the throne, as he was welcomed yesterday in London. The first thing we will hear is a fanfare from the state trumpeters of Scotland. Then we will hear the national anthem played by the band of His Majesty's Royal Marines in Scotland. And at that point, a royal salute of 21 rounds will be fired from Edinburgh Castle at the top of the hill, just straight up the hill there from St Giles, by the 105th Regiment Royal Artillery. And that sound will be heard right across this great capital city, where tomorrow the coffin will come up from the Palace of Holyrood House to the great church of St Giles there, which played such a part in the turbulent religious story of Scotland in the 16th and 17th centuries. And there will be a service of thanksgiving there for the Queen's life, a city which she knew well and loved. And in the course of tomorrow's events, the King will go to the Scottish Parliament to receive the official condolences of the members of the Scottish Parliament, which sits just at the bottom of the Royal Mile here, just across the street from the Palace of Holyrood House itself. Lord Lion, King of Arms, preparing to read the proclamation, and we will hear the fanfare from the state trumpeters in a few moments. And incidentally, at the top of the Market Cross there is a unicorn, the national animal of Scotland, as we prepare to hear the fanfare.
us pleased Almighty God to call to his mercy our late Sovereign Lady Queen Elizabeth II, of blessed and glorious memory, by whose decease the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is solely and rightfully come to the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George. We therefore, the Lords Spiritual and Temporal of this realm, and members of the House of Commons, together with other members of Her late Majesty's Privy Council, and representatives of the realms and territories, aldermen and citizens of London and others, do now hereby with one voice and consent of tongue and heart publish and proclaim that the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George is now, by the death of our late sovereign, happy of memory, become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of his other realms and territories, King, Head of the Commonwealth, Defender of the Faith, to whom we do acknowledge all faith and obedience with humble affection, beseeching God, by whom kings and queens do reign, to bless his majesty with long and happy years to reign over us. Given at St. James's Palace on the 10th day of September and in the year of our Lord 2022. God save the King! Three cheers for His Majesty the King. Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
Lord Lyon, King of Arms, leaves the market cross. band of the Royal Marines Scotland march away, having led those present in the national anthem, God Save the King, heard in Edinburgh for the first time for many a long year. The Royal Company of Archers, the King's bodyguard in Scotland, prepared to depart in preparation for tomorrow's ceremonial, which will fill the Royal Mile with crowds as the Queen's coffin comes from the Palace of Holyrood House to St Giles. There will also be a second proclamation, the same wording as we've heard. We're now quite familiar with it at St James's Palace, now again at the Market Cross in the Royal Mile, from Edinburgh Castle at 12:30 for the people of Edinburgh. The Royal Company of Archers, bearing their bows, leave Parliament Square in Edinburgh by the side of St Giles in Parliament House. Guard of Honour from the Royal Regiment of Scotland, the 5th Battalion. Their colonel was the Queen. And they too draw this part of the ceremony to a close.
James Noherty in Edinburgh, thank you. Those proclamations, which took place simultaneously in Scotland, in Wales, in Northern Ireland. We will be going very shortly to Royal Hillsborough and to Cardiff Castle to show you what took place there. But before that, Sally Osman, very moving watching those images, particularly given, and you know just how much Scotland meant to the Queen.
It is very, very moving, and looking at the archers, who are always an impressive sight. I've always seen them in happier times, at garden parties and the like. But yeah, I mean, the Queen, we know that she was... The personal connection with Scotland was always incredibly important, you know, which is, it's also a family connection. And from her mother, we saw in pictures earlier, you know, that connection with Glamis Castle through to Balmoral. But I think the important thing is she knew how important it was to be visible, to be seen, to show how she cared about every part of the United Kingdom.
And you went on many of those trips with her, didn't you?
Indeed. Holyrood Week, which usually happened in either late June or early July, was always a really joyous occasion in many respects, where she and the Duke, before we lost him, would before he retired, would stay at the Palace of Holyrood House. And it was one of the occasions particularly after they lost Britannia, that she would get to spend time with quite a few members of her staff who she wouldn't normally have the time to talk to, one-to-one, get to know them better. And that was one of the hallmarks of Holyrood Week, alongside all of the official ceremonials, etc.
And Northern Ireland too, you travelled with her there.
Northern Ireland too, again, they were always... she went, in 2014, she went on one of the first trips that was pre-announced to the media in Northern Ireland. Obviously, there had always been security issues before that, but this was, you know, the post her very important visit to Ireland in 2011, and it was part of that reconciliation. There was a picture that is that I will never forget, of her walking through Crumlin Road Jail, flanked by the then First Minister Peter Robinson, and on the other side the Deputy First Minister Martin McGuinness. And it was those moments of symbolism, of reconciliation, that was so important. That was a very important sort of trip for her, and with Duke by her side, obviously. And it really did mean a lot to the people of Northern Ireland.
Well, I think we can go straight to Northern Ireland now, because Mark Simpson is at Royal Hillsborough and has been watching the proceedings there. Mark.
It's still raining here, and there was very heavy rain just after 12 o'clock as the proclamation took place, but it still went ahead, and in some ways I think that's quite symbolic. As we know, the royal family have come here to Northern Ireland in good times and in bad, in good weather and in bad. Let's take a look back now at that proclamation. On commentary is my colleague Declan Harvey.
a single chime from the clock tower of the courthouse in Royal Hillsborough, and the proclamation will now be read by Norroy and Ulster King of Arms.
Whereas it hath pleased Almighty God to call to his mercy our late Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, of blessed and glorious memory, by whose decease the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is solely and rightfully come to the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George. We, therefore, the Lords spiritual and temporal of this realm, and members of the House of Commons, together with other members of Her late Majesty's Privy Council and representatives of the realms and territories, aldermen and citizens of London, and others, do now hereby, with one voice and consent of tongue and heart, publish and proclaim that the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of his other realms and territories, King, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith, to whom we do acknowledge all faith and obedience with humble affection, beseeching God, by whom kings and queens do reign, to bless his Majesty with long and happy years to reign over us. Given at St. James's Palace this 10th day of September in the year of our Lord 2022.
Proclamation Guard! Royal Salute! Present! Out!
The Norroy and
God
Ulster King
save
of
the
Arms.
King!
God save the King! Proclamation Guard! Slow! Out!
The Proclamation Guard, provided by 2nd Battalion Royal Irish Regiment, as they prepare to ground their arms. You can spot the Royal Irish Regiment because of their distinctive cobbeen, a shapeless hat based on an old Irish labourer's cap.
Three cheers for King Charles. Hip, hip. Hooray! Hip, hip. Hooray! Hip, hip. Hooray!
Proclamation Guard, this.
Well, let's reflect now on what we've just witnessed. With me is the historian Dr. Gavin Hughes, and inevitably when it comes to a proclamation, you think forward, but you also think back. What are your reflections?
Well, hello there, Mark. Absolutely. The ceremony we have just witnessed here today has not been seen since the last proclamation of Her late Majesty in 1952. But that demonstrates a continuity of monarchy. And indeed, actually, if you think the position of the Ulster King of Arms, who proclaimed the new king. That was in itself created in 1552, and here we are in 2022. So one king, King Edward VI, creates that role and position and declares the new king today in King Charles III. So there is a direct continuity, and that's the whole point of a ceremony like this for Northern Ireland and indeed the country.
Dr. Gavin Hughes, thank you. It is a day to look forward as well as back. A significant day here at Hillsborough Castle, and another significant day is coming up on Tuesday, because King Charles III is due to make his first visit to Northern Ireland as monarch. He came here 39 times as the Prince of Wales. His 40th visit to Northern Ireland will be his first as King Charles III, and one of the first places he's going to come to is here, the royal residence at Hillsborough Castle.
Mark Simpson, thank you very much. Well, let's join Jason Mohammed at Cardiff Castle now. Jason.
Thank you, Sophie. Diolch yn fawr iawn. The proclamation took place here in Wales just a short time ago, with a crowd around 2,000 people gathered here in the grounds of Cardiff Castle. What a sombre atmosphere, people watching quietly, bearing witness to this historic moment. The Wales First Minister, Mark Drakeford, led the proceedings, with the proclamation being delivered in both English and Cymraeg, Welsh, by the Wales Herald of Arms Extraordinary Thomas Lloyd OBE and the Lord Lieutenant of South Glamorgan, Morfydd Meredydd.
Gan ei bod wedi rhannu bodd I ddiw hollallluog, I alw i'w ofal ein diweddar sofran, yr aglwyddes Frenhines Elizabeth yr Ail, o fendigaid a gogoneddus goffadwriaeth. Y mae coron Teyrnas Unedig Prydain Fawr a Gogledd Iwerddon, o blegyd ei hymadawiad, wedi dod yn gwbl ac yn gyfiawn I ran y tywysog Charles, Philip, Arthur, George.
Whereas it has pleased Almighty God to call to his mercy our late Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, of blessed and glorious memory, by whose decease the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is solely and rightfully come to the Prince, Charles, Philip, Arthur, George.
Yr adimninau felly, ar glwyddi ysbrydol a thymhorol y deyrnas hon, ac aelodau o dir cyffredin, ynghyd ag aelodau eraill o gyfrin gyngor ei diweddar fawr hydy, cynrychiolwyr y teyrnasoedd a'r tiriogaethau, henaduriaid a dinasyddion Llundain ac eraill, yn awr yn datgan ac yn cyhoeddi drwy hyn yn unllais ac o galon a thafod unfryd, fod y tywysog Charles, Philip, Arthur, George, bellach, o blegyd marwolaeth ein diweddar sofran o serchus goffadwriaeth, wedi dod I ni yn unig gyfreithlon a chyfiawn, ddyledog arglwydd Charles y Trydydd, drwy ras Duw, a deyrnas Unedig Prydain Fawr a Gogledd Iwerddon a'i deyrnasoedd eraill, yn frenin, yn ben ar y gymanwlad, yn amddiffynwr y ffydd.
We therefore, the Lords spiritual and temporal of this realm, and members of the House of Commons, together with other members of Her late Majesty's Privy Council and representatives of the realms and territories, aldermen and citizens of London and others, do now hereby, with one voice and consent of tongue and heart, publish and proclaim that the Prince, Charles, Philip, Arthur, George, is now, by the death of our late Sovereign of happy memory, become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of his other realms and territories. King, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith.
I'r hwn yr ydym yn datgan ac anwyl serch gostynedig, ein holl ffydd a'n hyfuddod. Gan atolwg ar ei ddiw, drwy'r hwn y mae brenhinoedd a breninnesau yn teyrnasu, fendithio ei fawrhydu a hir oes hapus i deyrnasu drosom. Rhoddwyd ym Mhalas St James y degfed dydd o Fedi ym mlwydd ein harglwydd 2020.
To whom we do acknowledge all faith and obedience with humble affection, beseeching God, by whom kings and queens do reign, to bless his Majesty with long and happy years to reign over us. Given at St James's Palace, the 10th day of September in the year of our Lord, 2022.
Hooray! Royal salute! Reason! Out!
Normal delivery. Normal delivery.
Duw a gadw'r brenin.
God save the King.
Now for a gun salute here in the grounds of Cardiff Castle, fired by the 104 Regiment Royal Artillery.
Proclamation Guard! For ground! Up! Ground! Up!
You okay?
Proclamation Guard will remove headdress. Remove headdress.
Tair blwydd yw farhadu'r brenin.
3 cheers for His Majesty the King. Hip hip. Hooray! Hip hip. Hooray! Hip hip. Hooray!
Well, as you can see behind me, the Proclamation Party have now left the castle and the crowds are slowly making their way down Westgate Street and into Castle Street. Dr. Marianne Luffler joins me now from Cardiff University. Marianne, a very good afternoon to you. Prynhawn da.
Prynhawn da.
An historic occasion, your reflections on what you've witnessed today.
A unique historic occasion for Wales and for the United Kingdom. Not only did we have a nod to the Welsh language here, the Welsh language had pride of place in this ceremony and in proclaiming Charles as King Charles III, our First Minister. And of course, when Queen Elizabeth came to the throne, we didn't have a First Minister either. Our First Minister opened proceedings in the Welsh language, then switched to English. And the proclamation itself, in the proclamation, Welsh and English were woven together. We had parts read out in Welsh, then repeated in English. So this is an event where perhaps for the first time in history, we've heard Welsh and English completely woven together in one huge historic ceremony.
The now King, then Prince of Charles, was in Cardiff just a month ago. Talk about the bond that he has with the people of Wales.
As Prince of Wales, of course, Charles has got a long history with Wales. But my feeling is that since about the year 2000, these connections have become much closer. And strangely enough, they appear to be bound up with devolution. He revived the position of the official harpist to the Prince of Wales in the year 2000. In 2007, he bought a Llwyn y Wermod, his estate in Carmarthenshire. And in 2010, when he started his campaign for wool, he really put Welsh wool on the map and made sure that Welsh woolen products were known and branded worldwide.
Marianne, thank you very much indeed. An historic occasion for the people of Wales and the United Kingdom, Sophie.
Jason Mohammed at Cardiff Castle, thank you. And let's stay with the subject of Wales, because we, of course, now, Roy, have a new Prince of Wales, Prince William. How much of an impact, how much of a change will that be for him?
It's an enormous change for him. Of course, the new Prince and Princess of Wales will step up and take centre stage in the new reign of King Charles. Wales, of course, being incredibly important to them. It's not just about the titles, it's about an affinity with the country. They, of course, spent the first couple of years of their married life in Anglesey as William was working there as a search and rescue pilot for the RAF. We saw the importance of Wales reaffirmed when he took his family, including the children, to Cardiff during the Queen's recent Platinum Jubilee celebrations. We saw them all there again, and it's my understanding, I've been told, that William and Catherine and their family will spend much more time in Wales now going forwards.
Well, Roy Nika and Sally Osman, thank you both very much for joining me here this morning. So, King Charles III has set out on his new path as monarch. He has vowed to continue in his mother's footsteps, saying that he is deeply aware of the great inheritance of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty that have been passed to him. As he prepares to travel right across the United Kingdom this week, his mother, the Queen, has begun her final long journey. These are live pictures of her cortege as it continues its 6-hour journey, which began in Balmoral at 10 o'clock this morning and will end today in Edinburgh at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. Thousands of people, and you can see some of them there, have already been lining the streets to pay their respects as the cortege passes through. Just a glimpse of what is to come over the next week ahead. Goodbye.